Okay, so when we get to this idea of government power, people like the viceroy who have tons of power, this power has to be checked. You have to balance things out a little bit, otherwise individuals can get really corrupt, right? So let's talk a little bit now about how power was checked within the government system in the colony there of New Spain. So there's this system of checks and balances, not the same as what we have here in the United States. It's much different. In this case, basically, the viceroy, who has the authority of the Spanish king, only he's there physically in New Spain, his power is checked because all government officials and people who are living there can bring complaints about him to the audiencia. And in fact, the Spanish crown, right, the Spanish government, the imperial government, they encourage this. They want you to complain about the viceroy so that they know what's going on there in New Spain. They don't want this guy to just run rampant with power. They want to control his power. So they're like, hey, everybody, everyone who's a government official out there, even if you're in the church or if you're just a local person, I want to hear your complaints. So go to your local court system and make complaints about the viceroy or about other government officials so that we can control them so they don't get too out of hand with power and they don't get too corrupt. Okay, so this is encouraged by the Spanish government. So here, let's talk about a couple of examples, two main examples of how the viceroy's power could be checked. And we'll talk about those complaints in just a second. Okay, so one is the visita. The visita is basically an inspection. Sometimes it could be a surprise inspection. So you'll have an individual, visitador, basically, this guy's an inspector who's coming from Spain. He's going to come to Mexico or New Spain, and he's going to do an inspection and see how things are being ran. What is the viceroy doing? Is he getting all the profits that he can be in an efficient manner? How is their justice system working? Are the native people being protected or are they being exploited, right? So these are various things that he can look at. Is the colony safe? Is it protected, right? He wants to make sure that the economy is running good and smoothly and efficiently. He wants to make sure that profits are as high as they possibly could be coming from the colony back to Spain, you see? So that's why this inspector, this visitador, is coming there to New Spain. He's doing an inspection. It may be a surprise inspection, like, oh shoot, the inspector's here, get everything together, make sure that, the colony looks like it's running efficiently, it's that kind of situation. And he may come and stay for a long period of time. He may be there for months, all right? Now, when he comes, this inspector, this royal inspector, when he comes, he can take over control of the entire government. He basically can take over all the powers of the viceroy while he is there doing this inspection in New Spain, okay? And so that's a lot of power for this inspector. And while he takes over that power, while he takes over that control of the colony, he can make new laws. He could change how the government works. He could punish individuals, right? And he's going to make all of these changes, and then he'll ultimately send them as recommendations back to Spain for the approval of the Spanish government. Okay, so this is one way that you could check the power of the viceroy and other government individuals. If this inspector comes and doesn't like the way that the colony is being ran, he will take over control of it and make changes that he feels are appropriate so that the economy is running efficiently and the government is not too corrupt. Okay, so it's a check on the power of government officials, particularly the viceroy. So that's one. That's one of the main ways of checking the power of government officials there in New Spain. The second way that we'll talk about is the residencia. The residencia is a judicial review, okay? A judicial review. And what are they reviewing? They will review the jobs of the viceroy and other high government officials, meaning that at the end of the term of the viceroy, because the viceroy doesn't rule for his whole life, he's going to rule for a period of time, and that period of time may vary, okay, depending on the king and what he wants from this viceroy. So at the end of the term of that viceroy, he is going to have to go up for judicial review, where the audiencia, who is in charge of this review, is going to hear all the complaints against this viceroy, and they're going to determine whether he's done his job correctly, efficiently, or if he's been corrupt. And so in this judicial review, they can decide on whether, you know, he needs to be punished or not. Okay, so that's another way of checking the power of the viceroy. Let me take a look at the chat real quick. I see some blinking going on there. Okay, so looking at the chat, I see there was a couple of questions. One here says, do the children have to pay money for the position, or is it just passed down? This is referring to the cabildo and the town councilors. It will just be passed down. They don't have to pay for it. Okay. Another one. Okay, that's a private message. So let me say that. Okay. Let me see. All right. Excellent. So we'll come back to that. I see there's a question on the exam. Regarding the exam, why when I go into assignments, it doesn't show up? It should. We can talk about that one later. Let me know after class. Let's talk about that. Okay, so back to the lecture. So ways of checking the power of the viceroy and other high government officials: the visita, this inspection, the royal inspection, and the residencia, which is a judicial review, looking at any accusations or complaints or grievances about corruption or inefficiency by the viceroy and other government officials. Okay, so this is supposed to kind of check the power of these guys, right? So that they're not out of control. But there are some weaknesses to this system of checks and balances, right? Because the audiencia, these judges who are hearing the judicial review, they could be bribed. They could take bribes. And maybe they're not going to punish the viceroy or other high government officials because of the bribes. Witnesses who are going to be giving their testimony, who are going to be, you know, giving their complaints, they could be intimidated so that they don't complain about the viceroy and other officials. They could lie. They could commit perjuries, lying on the stand, right? And so there's many weaknesses. There's ways around this system of checks and balances. If the viceroy is found guilty of corruption, oftentimes he's not going to get punished too harshly. It's going to be a light punishment. That's just how the system worked. You know, many times, you know, these guys may have been corrupt, they may have been greedy, but they didn't get the punishment that they actually deserved. Okay, so this is another weakness of the system of checks and balances. And why? Why are they, you know, giving so much leeway? Why is the Spanish royal government giving so much leeway to these government officials like the viceroy? Because they need them. Okay, they need these individuals to run the colony so that Spain could get its profit from the colony, right? And so they don't want to set a precedent of punishing them too harshly, because then later, you know, later officials may not run the government in the same way. They may not want to be loyal to the royal government, right? Okay. And the last thing on the system of checks and balances, we already talked about how judges could be bribed. The oidores are basically judges, right? These judges at the local level and within the audiencia, they have their position for life, So once you become a judge, you're there forever. And so once you have that position for life, you're going to be making a lot of local connections because you're going to be on the high end of society. So you'll be making a lot of connections with local people in your area, right? Usually pretty wealthy, influential people. So because of your personal and business connections with local individuals, you as a judge could become corrupt because maybe you're going to rule in favor of these individuals and you do what they want. Your rulings may be biased because you're being influenced by wealthy, influential individuals who live in the area that you live in because you're connected to them, because you're there for life, right? So you have corruption taking place amongst the oidores. Oidores are basically judges, okay? So you have corruption taking place amongst these judges as well because they're there for life. They make these social ties with individuals, and then their decisions may be biased because of that.